Four Sigmatic today has sold over $300 million of products with very little outside funding. Mushroom coffee globally is now over $2 billion category. We created the original mushroom coffee a decade ago. Sigmatic is the #1 organic coffee in the US natural channel. As part of this journey, I got into these, there was this non-dualistic science and non-dualistic conference, and there was the tapes, and it was cool because they brought all these spiritual leaders and thought leaders and thinkers around the world, seemingly believed in different forms of God. There's CERN, the world's largest scientific laboratory. They were still trying to find Higgs boson, and they poured so much money into this thing. Experience with myself, people around me having fear, and usually it does end up in a worse place. Even though on paper, intellectually, it's like, well, I eat this clean and I do this yoga and Pilates and practice and meditate and breath work, but you're sick all the time, that you're now cleansing in India for this thing. But I think it's probably something emotional.
So welcome back, everybody, to the Love Conquers Fear podcast. I am going to distill a couple of books that I've read recently, and my guest today has also read it. In the episode number 2 with Mark Gober, he talked about the impact that Dr. David Hawkins had on his life. And I've talked with Mark Gober further about that, and he said that at one point he got into David Hawkins to the point where he watched 200 hours of his lectures over the period of about a year or so. And, when I re-listened to that episode, I realized there was a little tell in there for me that really lit me up. And I thought it's now time to read a little bit of Dr. David Hawkins. And so I read his book recently called How to Surrender to God, and it's a profound read. I would highly recommend it on Audible. It's only 2.5 hour long listen, but essentially it's this exploration into the unity of all things and how your soul over many lifetimes is seeking to have that unification with God. And again, when I say the word God, a lot of people are triggered by that. I understand that. But, replace it again with consciousness or the greater intelligence of the universe, if you're kind of a Joe Dispenza fan, or anything that makes you feel comfortable. The key point, no matter how much you study early spirituality, is that it's rooted in love. That's really the key. And we're going to dive into that a lot today. But it was really cool because, reading that book, it really has a lot of synchronicity with the lattice. And again, I wrote this for fun. I'm not seeking some financial gain with it. I'm just trying to make an impact. But, this is available on Amazon now, and it's a positive science fiction novella about how humanity could have a collective awakening to the knowledge of what our actual reality is, the reality beyond this world of physical form that we find ourselves in, whereas Mark Gober would say, we only know what 4% of the entire universe is made of. We call that matter. The other 96% we call dark energy and dark matter. Truth is, we have no idea what it is. We don't know if we're living in a multidimensional reality. So there's a lot of things that we need to have real scientific curiosity about and childlike play, and not view them in a dogmatic way. Remember that Copernicus, when he perfected the telescope, he tried to get the clergy to look through it to show them that the earth was not the center of all things. And they refused to do it, and he actually got excommunicated from the church. So we need to be fearless in terms of our pursuit and discovery, because there's so much we don't know. I mean, just think about it for a second. Just pause and reflect on the fact that we only know what 4% of the universe is made of, but yet we act sometimes so arrogantly like we have everything figured out. So anyways, in the lattice, Dr. Alexander Bliss, which if you read anything by Dr. David Hawkins, you'll understand where the word bliss comes from. He ultimately has this crazy idea to unify humanity, and the collective awakening occurs, and it changes the course of not just human history, but the history that will then propagate the universe from the years 2030 through 2085. So I had a lot of fun with it. People are really enjoying it. I'm getting a lot of great reviews. And I wrote this, to process the over probably 50 books at this point I read this year into a science fiction novella, and give humanity basically a positive way of how things could play out versus all the dystopianness. And I think that the dystopianness, frankly, is because a lot of science fiction writers themselves are caught up completely in the world of form. And as a result, they are making the same mistake as a lot of scientists are making, which is, in the world of form, if you can't prove it to me, it's not true. And so the world of form, people tend to be very anti-spirituality, very anti-God, very much a product of, when they grapple with something like the hard problem of consciousness, they look at it as, well, of course, consciousness just magically popped out of matter. Nothing to see here. And the reality is, none of us actually know what consciousness even is. We can grapple with consciousness with spirituality. And that's what Dr. David Hawkins did in that book. He basically says, look, God and consciousness are both fundamental and the same thing. It's the root of the existence that we live in. We're all part of that. So therefore, we're all children of God. We're all part of consciousness. We all have a collective union, and we all return to that when we pass in physical form and we live from lifetime to lifetime. He was very much a believer, or a knower, if you will, of reincarnation, very much how I am as well, and has been explored by Stephen Mitchell in his master translation of the Gita, which is one of the original books about the knowledge of self in the world of form, and the knowledge that there's the observer and the person that's walking around in physicality. So anyways, I would highly encourage you to listen to Mark Gober's episode again and pick up some Dr. David Hawkins books. How to Surrender to God is a really, really good one. And it's cool that it has synchronicity with this. And frankly, this has synchronicity with a lot of things I've read on spirituality. I continue to repeat the same patterns in my mind. And as you'll hear from my guest today, that gets it into your subconscious. I remember that from the last walk we had together. So pick it up if you feel moved. And if you know how to reach me and you don't want to buy it, that's fine. I'll just email you a copy. So just reach out to me. I'm not trying to sell books. I'm just trying to make an impact. So thanks again. Today, I'm honored to have my good friend Tero on. Tero is someone who has really changed my life. You founded Four Sigmatic, and Four Sigmatic is something I put in my body every day, literally every day, multiple times a day. And yesterday, as we're recording this, was Yom Kippur, and I do the fast like I did every year. And it's a great day for reflection and really to get recentered and start the new year fresh. It's one of the things I love about Judaism is this, this practice of fasting and cleansing our body. And you'll be happy to know that last night, as I broke the fast at Jason Karp's home, he was on episode 3. He's the founder of Hue Chocolate, as you know. One of the first things I put in my body was Four Sigmatic mushrooms. So it's, I feel great.
I'm happy to hear that. I'm great to be here. I'm excited for your new journey with this podcast, the book, and whatever it's gonna transpire.
Yeah. Well, I'm having a blast with it, and as you know, I'm operating from this place of really trying to make a big impact for all of our sakes. For our children, for all of humanity. There's a real love for all of humanity. And the divinity that we have at our core, and returning to that. So let's talk about your background, because it's not your typical background. I knew you grew up essentially as a forager on your family's farm in Finland. So maybe we start there.
Yeah, I'm from Finland. I grew up on our family farm that we've had at least since 1619 in Finland. Finland was a few hundred years part of, I think over 600 years part of Sweden and part of the Russian Empire. So we don't really know for how long exactly, but at least since 1619. And that makes my parents the 12th generation and me and my brother the 13th generation living in the farm.
Oh.
And there I grew up like learning about mushrooms, berries, foraging, farming, forest. And for the context of this podcast, I was like brought up half pagan, I guess, to use these like words that are a little blunt and don't, but like believing in powers of nature, and a lot of traditional Finnish beliefs are rooted in various nature-based religions. And then half Lutheran, which is the dominant form of Christianity in Scandinavia and Nordics. And yeah, grew up there and studied chemistry, nutrition, got into this world. A lot of things happened. I've lived in 8 other countries between Finland and then landing in the US. I've been here a little over a decade, married to a beautiful wife.
Yeah, your soulmate.
Yeah, from California. And we have 3 little kids, all born and raised Texans now.
Yeah.
And yeah, we still spend our summers at the farm. I'm trying to help my brother where I can. And then rest of the year we're here in Texas.
Yeah. I'm envisioning that this farm is like this idyllic, beautiful countryside.
It can be, especially in the summer, and there's definitely moments. Europe is pretty north, actually. Like you don't really think, like Spain is on the same level as like Toronto or something.
Right.
So there just happens to be a Gulf Stream that keeps it a little warmer, but it's very dark. So there's in the summer, there's no really night part of the year, and then in the winter, there's almost no daylight. So it's very like extreme, and there's moments of beauty in all seasons, but it's not this idyllic place all year round. It's pretty rough, you know, comparable to what I would maybe call like Alaska or something like that.
Right.
And then I think a lot of people romanticize, if they grew up in cities, and the life on a farm, you know, and the beauty of it is being close to nature, but it's also a lot of hard work, like practically, like we would run out of warm water and things like that. But when you are older, you appreciate those lessons, but maybe as a kid, it's not always as fun, you know?
Yeah. As we know, we learn through suffering, all is through love.
But it's weird also to your technology background. Our farm is on the other side of the lake from Nokia. Nokia is a small city in Finland, originally a sawmill. They made winter tires. They spun off a winter tire business. They made rubber boots, TVs, and then cell phones. So we had computers and e-learning from very young age. So we got our first PC before World Wide Web was discovered in CERN. Yeah. And we would pay our bills online in like 1990. And there was a specific software. And my first, you know, the mobile phones and smartphones were like 99. And it was just like a weird, this yin yang of like high tech in a way, where it's surrounded by this rural nature of growing up. So yeah.
And tell me about when was the moment that you decided to start Four Sigmatic, and what was it that caused you to see that the world needed that?
Yeah, Four Sigmatic is the original mushroom coffee brand. I founded it in 2012. And I say that mushrooms chose me. I didn't choose mushrooms. And why I say that is I learned about mushrooms from my mom, who was taught physiology and anatomy since I was like a little kid. And our family has a bunch of history with that, but also other herbalism. And I was always fascinated by human body, optimal human performance, but I kind of rebelled, like many teenagers and others, of like the farm life that we grew up with. And I always thought I wouldn't do anything around that, but it kept coming back to my life. About 20 years ago, I won an innovation award for discovering this mushroom species with my friend. And that was another moment. And then I did coach professional athletes in nutrition. And one of the secret hacks was always these adaptogenic mushrooms. How they kept coming back, and there was just a point when nobody else was doing it, and I was entrepreneurial in my mind, which translates into unhireable.
All right.
So
I know that one, brother.
yeah, I've been hired and technically never fired, but it's gotten close.
Right.
But yeah, so then it was a passion of mine where kind of passion met just a need to have a certain lifestyle almost. Like it was, I didn't expect it to do as financially well as it has done. It was more like I was into it. Nobody was doing it. I was scratching my own itch.
Right.
And that's where it started. But it was very much driven by personal passion and a need to have a lifestyle of an entrepreneurial lifestyle more than like some outcome.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm happy to say I literally use all the blends.
Yeah.
And I use the protein powder. So I'm getting like mega doses of adaptogens every day.
You're part fungi.
Yeah, part fungi, and I feel phenomenal.
Yeah.
I mean, the level of mental clarity it gives me, and just energy, and it felt so good to get that back in my body after the fast. And today, how many people are in the company? Like, how big is this company? I know I think it's #1 on Amazon, right?
Four Sigmatic today has sold over $300 million of products with very little outside funding. Mushroom coffee globally is now over $2 billion category. We created the original mushroom coffee a decade ago. Four Sigmatic is the #1 organic coffee in the U.S. natural channel and #1 functional coffee in U.S. retail overall. We're a best-selling ground coffee on Amazon, Whole Foods, Sprouts. It is sold in like 60 plus countries worldwide, but we're mostly focused on the US market.
Yeah, that's got to feel really good.
Yeah.
And it's all organic, right?
Yes, it's all organic, plant-based. We test every batch for, even if we buy like organic hemp protein or something, we still test it for all toxins. So try to do the best you can to deliver a healing, nutrient-dense product, a premium product to people, but in a still like a comparable price point.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the things I love about it the most is that I know I'm getting really high quality ingredients because I know you and I know you're obsessive about that.
Yeah.
And I see your Facebook ads all the time too. I'm like,
oh, you do?
I'm like, I really don't need to see these. I'm already buying everything.
Yeah. You know how
you're out there now. You're like, you're the, I never knew that you would be the front man for it on Facebook ads. You're out there now.
I didn't plan to be. I've written a few best-selling books on mushrooms and done a lot of podcasts and public appearances. That was never the intention at all.
Yeah.
It was just like nobody else was speaking about mushrooms. There was a lot of lack of domain expertise and understanding. So I got pulled into it. And but yeah, I have a love-hate relationship with, PR and personal brand and all these things. But the good thing is like podcasts, for example, I love them long form, especially because it is a way to provide free education to people about all kinds of things.
Yeah. I mean, I'm always listening to them and it's amazing. I mean, just imagine if we had podcasts in the days of Benjamin Franklin or George Washington or some of these amazing American heroes or whatever the equivalent was in Finland. It would have been unbelievable to go back and into those archives. I mean, the best I can grasp of one of my heroes is Benjamin Franklin, is his early biographies are just incredible. Like his advice to a young tradesman is one of the best books I've ever read. But to listen to him riff with Thomas Jefferson, that would have been pretty awesome.
Yes, a 3-hour podcast.
Right, exactly. So let's talk about in terms of your spirituality, because you've helped me on that journey too. So the last walk that we went on around beautiful Lake Austin, one of the things people don't realize about Austin that haven't been here before, although that's a smaller and smaller number of people, is we live in these rolling hills Downtown is built with this beautiful lake and all these great trails around it. And that walk we went on really had an impact on me because we were breaking down, what we both believe in terms of the nature of spirituality and the nature of this reality that we live in. And you recommended a book to me, which I absolutely loved, and I've now recommended it to so many people. So, as I remember our conversation, you were saying during your soul quest, you'd read like probably over 130 books. All right, I've now read around 50. And you said out of all of those, the one that you remember the best, stuck with you most, was Awareness by Anthony DeMello.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I loved about Dr. David Hawkins' book, How to Surrender to God, is he's a lot like Anthony DeMello.
Very similar.
He's really funny, right?
Yes.
He's like laughing out loud. He's like kind of in this bliss state. I think when people reach that level of spirituality, they're really, really good about telling stories, making fun of themselves, like just not taking themselves so seriously. And Anthony DeMello definitely fits that. He's like the George Carlin of spiritual teachers, I tell my friends.
Yeah, exactly. I've learned so much from George Carlin too, even though, it's just like the twinkle in the eye, talk about very important, serious topics, but it was like the humor and the love that is around laughter.
Yes.
So yeah. Yeah, my story is it's ongoing. Let's start there. Like I have no clue.
It always is.
But what I remember is when I was in my late teens, we have to serve in the military. Finland, we have defense forces. We're not allowed to attack anyone or leave our borders, but we do share a border with Russia. And I went to the Air Force. I'm a sergeant in the Air Force. And I remember we had this winter camp, and it was like minus 30 to 40 degrees Fahrenheit, and we're by this ocean, and I'm laying in the snow, and I'm just there. And in the military, if you don't know, you're always rushed or you're waiting. There's no in between. So you're like running and you build a huge sweat, and then you lay and you wait. Or you rush to a place, then you get to a line, and then you wait for an hour for some, higher up major to show up to salute. And I'm just waiting there in the snow. And I'm like, came to realize that like everything I believe in life is probably not my belief. Like, it's like, it hit me. I didn't know what to believe, but I knew like my beliefs were from friends, family, parents, TV, video games. I was like, who am I? And it started this 6-7 year really journey of like peeling the onion layer by layer, unlearning things. And the more I peel, the more you cry.
Yep.
And it started with very basic things like a young teenager would think about what I think about, like material things and what do I want in life and relationships and stuff. And then he went deeper and deeper because you start to realize, and as part of that journey, first I gave up porn because military, there was porn magazines everywhere. Then like coffee, alcohol, meat, to just take them away and see what happens if I don't eat meat or drink alcohol or have coffee or whatever the journey is. And as part of that journey of like what was basically like self-help-ish, then it was called personal development, I read, like so many books. I spent a couple hundred days in various seminars, just like trying to figure out like, what do I believe in? And that's where spirituality came. There's like a Venn diagram of this like personal development, self-help to also spirituality.
All right.
And I was initially very turned off by religion, like as part of this journey. And I was like, this is like people are being manipulated in the name of God. And it took me a while as to age to learn that like both can be true, is that there are these higher powers, this spirituality, and any religion or parts of religion can still be like crooked and manipulated. Both can be true at the same time.
Both can be true at the same time.
And it's so obvious, but it's this non-duality. And learning about, there's so much of this like non-duality, versus I feel like society, at least for me, was pushing a lot of dualistic beliefs. It's like you have to pick a side. Here in America, it's like Democrat or Republican, choose, no other option.
Right.
Yeah. And then if you
I'm
believe,
independent, though. I did choose to not be.
yes, I try to do the same. But if you choose one side, then you have to believe everything they believe.
That's why I don't like
Yes.
why I don't like it, because it puts you in a box, and you should never put yourself inside a box. You should always have the ability to listen to your soul and have a communion to know what's right or wrong in your eyes, as opposed to what is right or wrong in a party's eyes. I think it's a ridiculous notion, I think.
Yes, completely agree. And as part of this journey, I got into these, there was this non-dualistic science and non-dualistic conference, and there was these tapes, and it was cool because they brought all these spiritual leaders and thought leaders and thinkers around the world that, seemingly believed in different forms of God. And they all had the same lessons in a way, or themes, if you may, about love and God. And I had experience through nutrition on various psychedelic substances too, but using psychedelics, in my late 20s more onwards, it deepened that belief about spirituality,
right?
Whatever words you want to use,
right?
Same way as psychedelics trigger people, is it's either very positive or very negative expression. Same way as if you like the word God, like you said, is triggers people,
right?
But these higher powers, and it was pretty obvious that there are these higher powers, and then it's a lifelong journey that will never be completed to figure out what it does mean. But I feel like I've at different times touched feelings and experiences of communicating with that energy.
And apparently when you do actually figure it out, you don't incarnate anymore. So you and I wouldn't be here if we had already figured it out.
No, I believe that. I remember actually when I lived in one of the countries I lived was Switzerland, and I really wanted to visit Myanmar, or if you want to call it Burma. And it was hard to get to at that point. You really couldn't get there, and you could go to Bangkok and get a visa, but because I was in Geneva and Myanmar was technically part of the UN, they had one of the only embassies were there. And then my friends mailed me their passports, and I got all as a visa, and I went with 2 friends there. And I've never been to North Korea, but I assume it's at that point it was as close as you can get to what is North Korea and the dictatorship. And the people that were being quote unquote oppressed were so happy. I think in America, people are worried about oppression for so much less than these people live through every day.
Of course.
And they were just so happy, is because they believed is that reincarnation. So the generals who were living in these big palaces, they must have done something right in their previous life. And then them, have to be kinder and nicer people to reincarnate into something better in their next life. And it's both a very sad and very beautiful thought.
It is very sad and very beautiful, because the reality is that the generals in those palaces, maybe some of them truly have become very enlightened, but maybe others are using the manipulation of the man-made scaffolding around religion. And this is what gives religion a bad name, is that the best part of religion to me, and I think you and I agree on this, is that the core of spirituality is deeply rooted in the love of the universe, or the love of God, or the love of consciousness, whatever you want to call it, that our core reality beyond this world of form and the highest vibratory field in the universe is love. And that's just fantastic to even know that that's the case. I mean, I saw that through psychedelics myself, but to know that that is the truth of our reality makes you so much more embodied in your physicality in this lifetime, because you realize that we live in a loving universe versus if you just stayed attached to the world of form, and it really isn't attached. It's like, how much can I get? Like what cars, what boats, whatever else. And it becomes this comparison game in the world of form that you basically start to say that, well, this boat, this car, these objects, they don't have a consciousness. They're not loving things. And basically, I'm just on this meaningless planet in an infinite universe. Nothing matters at all. I just should get everything I could get in this lifetime. You only live once. All of these belief systems come into play. And as Gary Zukov discusses in the book called The Seed of the Soul, which Oprah Winfrey says was the most transformative book she's ever read. A lot of the suffering in the world is because you've oppressed yourself into becoming a 5-sensory human being. And you really have created your own self-created matrix at that point, because you basically are caught up in the world of form. And the only path to happiness with any religious practice or spiritual practice you do is the discovery of self. In Christianity, it's called the kingdom of God is found within you.
Yeah, and Buddhism, Four Noble Truths, life is suffering. Suffering comes from attachment, and so on and so forth.
Right. One
of my favorite quotes, I believe it's credited to Bob Marley, is like, and I'm probably butchering English, it's not my first language, but it goes something like, is some people are so poor that the only thing they have is money. And I think that's a good summary of that feeling, is that there's a lot more than materia, which I think everyone knows, and they've had experiences of it many times. If you've had kids and you see a baby being born, or even pets and other these kind of experiences, near-death experiences, I feel like almost every human has had multiple of these moments, acupressure moments of experiencing that. Even if they've never taken psychedelics or meditated or prayed or whatever, they've had these moments. But then the 99% of their lived experience reminds them of this materia, and they forget that very sacred inner truth.
Yeah. One of the stories that really impacted me a lot is, you and I are both in YPO, in the Young Presidents Organization. And I went on a YPO trip to India for my first time to go to India. I've since been multiple times. And I studied Vedanta. And Vedanta literally translated means the end of knowledge. And essentially it means the end of knowledge in terms of what you need to be actually happy. And it's all about mastery of the mind. And if the mind is ungoverned and you don't develop the higher intellect, then you stay caught in anxieties about the future or worries about the past. And you can have a decade of your life where you completely miss the present. And one of the stories that Swamiji Parthasarathi told, who is the guru that I studied under, is that I had to look this up because it really shook me to my core when I read it. But I've since seen so many stories like this. But this German, I think he was German billionaire, he was worth $3 billion during the 2008-2009 financial crisis. His net worth went from 3 billion to 2 billion. And he ran out in front of a train and killed himself because he was so caught up in the world of form that all that mattered to him was the comparison game between his friends. And you can imagine the type of people he was hanging out with. People that, are talking about how many billions they have, or what car they just bought, or what plane they just bought, or, they're probably way fast cars at that point. They're more into planes. And eventually they'll be in the spaceships, right? And so it really struck me because, people watching this, you and I have done well financially, but to my knowledge, you're not a billionaire. I'm not a billionaire. And the people watching this, they could say, well, wait, hold on. I have very little money. And when I got married, I had $1,000. My wife had $2,000. So I know what it's like not to have money. I spent most of my life not having any money. And I can tell you that, yes, having money gives you the ability to have experiences, but some of the happiest people I've known are extremely spiritually developed and have very, very little money because they've had that mastery of the self, and they've essentially they have a regular communion with their soul, and they're very loving towards themselves and others as a result. They're not caught up in the comparison game.
Yeah, I'm about 20 years ago, I went to Dubai for the first time, and there it really hit me if like there's levels to money, and like pretty much no matter how much money you have, someone will have more. And I learned that early on being involved in like professional athletes, is that like there's always like someone better. I think in martial arts it's the most dramatic. It's like you think you're a hot shot. Somebody will always beat your ass. So
in that case, literally beat your ass.
Yes, literally. It's such a great like sport or practice, because it's in a way it reminds you of that specific, in the most concrete way, is that like don't get cocky, don't get caught in the BS around it. Is like there's always someone who can beat you. So stay humble and present in the moment and do your best. And yeah, it's all illusion. That's why I love like the likes like George Carlin or Anthony DeMello. It's like that book Awareness was top 3 most influential books I've read. I'm sure there's like 100 books better in the world, 1,000 books better in the world. But the time when I read it, just out of the military, I had 3 different people recommend it to me. I read it, and the key takeaway is like it's like we tell ourselves these stories and illusions that are not real.
Yep.
And if you don't want to read the book, there's also on YouTube some of his old talks. They're very entertaining, funny, about like just the illusions and stories we tell ourselves all day long, and how they suppress our enjoyment in many ways.
Right.
Yeah.
So you've done a lot of reading, and awareness for me did hit me at the right time. So when you told me about the book, I could feel myself light up, and I'm getting better and better about reading my own energy on whether or not it's the right time to do something or the wrong time. And you know, one of the things that I loved about that book, and I want to ask you about what you believe about the nature of reality, but just to set it up, is that he said in that book that if you completely understand the root of your suffering for anything, like 100% embody it, then the suffering goes away. And there are certain narratives that I've told myself since I was very young, that once I fully understand, wait, I am actually still caught up in that narrative, and it's time to graduate from that narrative. You know, for example, like I don't harbor any ill will, and I didn't prior to reading that book, against all the people that picked on me as a kid because I grew up programming since I was 7. It was very unusual growing up here in Texas. You are now, you know, a Texan. You now know that that football is like a religion here. And, you know, here I am like programming over 40 hours a week from age 7 through my 20s. And that is what helped me get good at the material game, is that I was like right place, right moment in history, right passion, but it's genuine passion. It wasn't like a fake thing. I was never doing it because I thought this was going to make me money. I was doing it because I really thought that, and I know that I was born to change the world for the better through technology. And so I've been practicing that over and over again. Every business I've started has been kind of leveling up for that, the most recent being Data.World, which has really become foundational to the enterprise AI movement. And now, you know, with Love Conquers Fear, my 7th venture as a holding company, which includes this podcast. But completely embodying the suffering was the biggest takeaway for me with that book. And I'm just curious, like, what was the biggest takeaway for you with awareness, and what is your thesis on what is our actual reality? Like, what is this Earth School all about?
I think the last question is very interesting. But to tackle the two first is, when I read Awareness I think I just turned 20 at that point. It was more like I still had like 5 years of unlearning left, but it rooted me in this belief of like illusions and stories and
Deprogramming is what I call it.
yeah. And so I don't know if I like learned anything else at that point other than that a lot of the rat race that we put ourselves into and cultures. That's why I was so interested in like traveling the world, backpacking. After that experience was like to see the world and see how people around the world are kind of all the same. It's like first when you start learning about multicultural, you start learning, it's like, oh, so for you, Friday is a sacred day. For me, it's Sunday. And it's like all these like differences, like, wow, you eat that kind of food. We don't eat that food. It's like eating a horse okay. It's not okay. This like cow's a sacred thing. It's like, wow, we're so different. But then the more you do it, it's like, no, it's kind of the same. And that was the epiphany for me. It was definitely around like these illusions and stories that I was telling myself. And it's not like it stops. Like I still tell myself stories that are not true. Like right now I have 3 young kids and I see their personalities form. And I start in my head telling these stories of who they are, like extrapolating their like personalities instead of enjoying it in this moment. But I like, my head goes like, where are they in 20 years? Where if they keep on this path? And I'm projecting and like, I constantly catch myself like, don't do that. So it's like this, it's this muscle that you stretch. And then the more you stretch it, it doesn't bounce back the same way anymore to the bad habits, so to say, but it still bounces back. And to the more deeper question that you finished about what we are, I don't have a clue. And like at the end of the day, again, I've had experiences that define some of my beliefs, but I don't know. I think spirituality is interesting because right now I feel like you have to believe in God or gods of some sort, or you have to believe in aliens, or both. And otherwise it just kind of does not make sense. And it's easy to discredit certain pockets of isms, right? You know, if you're Islamic, Jewish, that doesn't matter. Like, what do you, like, it's easy to discredit or like poke holes at stuff. But like, if you zoom out enough and think about what we know and what we don't know. I like this anecdote of, before moving to Texas, I lived briefly in Los Angeles where I met my wife. And I would go in the mornings, early morning, I would live in Venice Beach. I would walk to the pier. And you look from the pier to the Pacific Ocean. Yeah. And I like to think like us as whole humanity, not me, but like humanity, we know as much about the world and the universe as I was able to see of the Pacific Ocean from the Venice Pier, which is not a lot.
It's not a lot, right?
Even like, people refer to these numbers like we know this percentage, like you mentioned, is like, do we know? Do we like?
That's true.
Like, do we?
I'm just talking about the dimension we can see.
Yes, it's like I don't know, like what's out there. But I would like to believe that there are powers. I sometimes call it the big electron. I got it from George Carlin, but it's the big electron. So it goes, whoo,
right?
Whoo, it just vibrates.
Right.
It doesn't judge.
Right.
It just vibrates, and that's interesting. One little tangent, if you may. I mentioned I lived in Switzerland, and I had roommates. Yeah. And it's a weird place because you have like the UN and you have like these watchmakers, but then there's CERN, the world's largest scientific laboratory. Yeah. And at that point, they were still trying to find Higgs boson, and they poured so much money into this thing. And a lot of my roommates were like, one guy was part of capturing the first people in the world to capture neutral antimatter, and they were like actual like geniuses in physics. And it's so interesting. And at the same time, I'm reading all these like spirituality books and trying to like watch tapes of this, you know, science and non-duality conference of spiritual leaders.
Right.
And they're all speaking the same language.
They are.
It's at the end of the extreme, so to say, extreme science and extreme spirituality. They're talking about vibrations, the universe, particles.
Yeah.
And that was a big epiphany for me, is like, it's the same, even though in theory, they're the most polar opposite beliefs of the world. Because they do believe in physical form because of particle physics. But at the same time, like how they describe the world is the same as my hippie friend in Sedona or Kauai would describe it, the world.
Right, right. No, I love that. And I think that the dogmatic separation between science and spirituality is part of the suffering in the world right now. Because, you know, science starts with this miracle you have to accept and grapple with, which is the miracle of the Big Bang, which is frankly what they're trying to decode at CERN.
Yes.
Like that's what they're trying to figure out.
Yeah.
It's
God particle. And totally. And what I struggle with after studying sciences, I've founded a biotech company, I study chemistry. It's what I struggle is like, it's the pursuit of truth. A lot of scientists present it as the truth.
Right.
And that to me is a huge disconnect between much of the science community, not all, much of the science community and what it was originally supposed to be. It's like the Saudis say this, like that, yeah, but like it's the pursuit of truth and the lack of humility of that process and the arrogance to say something is like we know that this is the truth. It's like, do you?
Right.
Do you know?
Yeah.
And we constantly are reminded of the fact that we don't know by new discoveries coming in all fields.
Right.
Some fields more than others, and we just still arrogantly believe that this is how it is.
Well, there's a lot more comfort in giving yourself that internal narrative. There's a lot more comfort in saying like, we have figured it all out, because it's back to political parties. It's the reason why people have more comfort being either Republican or Democrat. There is actually a natural level of discomfort in being an independent. The level of discomfort is you have to hold two ideas as true at the same time.
And if I may continue on to your previous question, what do I believe? I believe that the fundamental challenge we have is that we know this physical form will die. And there are people that don't believe in that, you know, the extreme biohackers, and maybe they will eventually be right. But throughout human history, we've had this knowledge of physical death. And because of the fear of the physical death, I feel like there are these ways how people deal with that fear.
Right.
And not everybody tries to respond to that fear with love and surrender and non-attachment, but they respond with, call it dogma or structure or rules that are very rigid.
Right.
Because it's how they try to control that emotion of fear, instead of like surrendering to the fear, leaning into the fear,
right,
and pushing through that fear into the other side. They try to build a wall, a shelter of rules and things, which works initially. It's easy, but like it's not bulletproof as time goes by. So that's a belief of the world and life that I've seen both with myself and people around me.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's because the weird amnesia that we get from being reincarnated, like a lot of people will challenge me on this belief in reincarnation because they'll say, well, why would we have this amnesia? Why would we not know about all of our past lives, et cetera? And the way I try to relate it to them is if you went to college and you had every professor say, Tero, don't worry about studying that. Here's the answer key. You're going to make an A+. You would be like, hey, I'm cheated. Like I'm paying all this money for college and I'm not even learning. And you would especially be offended if it was classes that you actually really wanted to do. classes that you were like, I love this subject. Like, I really want to have that beautiful journey of exploration. And so my thesis on the reality we're living in is that this is a school, Earth, for our souls. And ultimately, we are constantly rediscovering how to manifest love, how to grow our own consciousness, how to have more experiences in consciousness to really absorb kind of the totality of the experience to the best ability, which God is experiencing all the time, or consciousness, however you want to say that, is experiencing all the time through us. And that the purpose is to constantly expand the capacity for love. And I actually believe that that's why the universe continues to expand. Like, there was this belief for a while that the universe was collapsing back in. And now we know, no, it's just continues to expand.
We've never spoken about this, but did you ever read or enjoy Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy?
One of my favorite series of all time. One of the best experiences of my life as a dad. You know this from being a dad, is that it's so much fun to relive some things from your childhood and see it through your child's eyes, right? These beautiful beings who have just this fresh slate to receive. And reading the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, the series, to our youngest child was an absolute joy. And it's really profound because Douglas Adams had so many things figured out for the time we're living in 2025.
Yes.
Including AI and, Marvin the depressed robot.
Yes.
Et cetera, who had become self-actualized. And it's just like, okay, I'm vastly more intelligent than these human beings, but yet I'm just stuck in this, box. And so it's just, wandering around depressed all the time.
And maybe this is, just way how I process things, and it's not perfect for others, but there are these windows like babies, psychedelics, but also humor that just allow you to grasp things that are otherwise, like, words are so limiting form of expression sometimes that it's like hard to put into words. And I've always found joy, be it like the George Carlin or the Anthony DeMello, but also Douglas Adams. And like, it's just like the humor, and it's so outrageous, but it's so accurate, like in a way.
It is.
And also like the Earth being this computer,
all right,
and like
processing the answer to the universe.
Yeah, which we already know it's, it's 47.
42.
42. Sorry. I got to reread it. 42. But what is the question? It's like, so yeah, I
and you remember what the question was when the computer finally spit that one out?
No, I don't remember.
It was just like 6 times 7.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
After another 10,000 years of waiting.
But it's just we're in this like experiment laboratory in a way, and I do believe in that. Again, I totally could be wrong, but it does make me think. Be it again, God, universe, vibrations, aliens, but it feels like this little computer here going.
Yeah, I mean, on the aliens front, like, I definitely think that my thesis is there's one prime creator that has created all life in the universe, and that two things can be true. You can have natural selection and evolution. It was divinely triggered and divinely guided. One thing that I learned recently, I don't know if you know this, I'm just sharing knowledge, you probably already know this, but I found it pretty fascinating, is that the water on Earth is actually older than the age of the sun. Did you know that?
No, I did not know that.
Yeah, so the sun was born 4.6 billion years ago. And the Earth was born 4.54 billion years ago. And life has been here since 4 billion years ago. Hominids have been here for 4 million years, and we derive from them. And Homo sapiens, what we are, been here for 250,000 years. So yes, we should be very humble, because in geologic time, like, we haven't been here all that long. But water actually came from somewhere in interstellar space to Earth, and is not all of our water, but a very big portion of our water came from space. And we know that life started on Earth from water. We know that's where it began, or at least that's the theory. We can't say that we know that for sure, because we don't know that for sure, because we went around 4 billion years ago to know that. Although God was, consciousness was, so maybe we do know that. We're deceiving ourselves right now. But somewhere inside of our souls, it knows, and that life probably started from some water that came from somewhere else, which is pretty fascinating, right?
Yeah.
Was that God divinely guiding some aliens to say, hey, this planet has the capacity for life, and so send it this? Or was it,
or
what?
Or are aliens ourselves from the future?
Yeah.
You know, as we've evolved, or is our experience with angels actually experiences with quote unquote aliens, and like seeing a spaceship or some sort of creature? They both can be true.
They both can be true. Yeah.
Probably are.
Yeah.
But it's just fascinating to think about it at times, but then also come back to the present moment, because you can get like really lost in that world of it's like how deep you want to.
Yeah, I mean, and there's a lot of, I'm sure, bullshit in that world, a lot of conspiracy theories and stuff, like in every world, including in religion. There's a lot of
or New Age spirituality. I know so many
homeopathy.
I know so much horrible stories of abuse of people in the name of, in theory, beautiful New Age spirituality, psychedelics. There's a lot of,
I've heard some horror stories. Yeah. Especially for women. I mean,
and I know firsthand just both, financial abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse. I mean, I know so many bad stories. So, I guess like where there's darkness, there's light, and vice versa. And they live together. So,
well, in the world of form, when people are called in that world of form, including if they are kind of professing to be very spiritually developed, the ones that I think are taking advantage actually aren't that developed. They're saying they're developed. But I'm glad you pointed that out, because, for people watching this, if they have an interest in something like psychedelics, they have to be really careful where they go and who they go with and what type of intentionality. And for me personally, I don't use psychedelics at all as a party drug. I only do it for spiritual reasons, and I only go around once a year. And it's to have that communion with my soul. And it actually led to me to not drink alcohol anymore. I mean, now I don't want to give alcohol this power and say like, I'll never have alcohol, because that's giving it a power over me. Instead, like, look, I'm not going to be taboo about alcohol at like Passover or something like that. I'll have it for a ceremonial purpose. But I did find out through a journey that I had transcended the need for it, if that makes any sense. Like, I grew up as a programmer. That means I mostly grew up behind a computer. Alcohol was a catalyst for me to come out of my shell a little bit at some parties and like be a little bit more social, not be as awkward, like as a deeply, introverted nerd at the time. And it helped our founding fathers have the gusto to sign the Declaration of Independence. They toasted it with Madeira. But it really is just a poison. I mean, like you can't show me a study that has any efficacy at all for alcohol. I mean,
well, it's a dumb molecule,
right?
If you want to consume, I heard this. I don't know who to credit it to. So it's like humans have basic needs, and when we list those basic needs, we often leave out one basic need just because it's socially not always accepted, is need to alter our state.
Mm-hmm.
So, food, shelter, love.
Right.
But most mammals, but definitely humans, Homo sapiens, have had this need for a long, long time to take something to have an altered state. And you can have the altered state in so many different tools.
Right.
And for some reason, alcohol has become, I guess, pretty convenient to ferment beverages. But compared to some other tools, and it's a pretty dumb molecule.
It is a pretty dumb molecule. I mean, it is interesting, though, that in the Muslim religion, they're anti-alcohol. I mean, I think that's fascinating. So they're not succumbing to this dumb molecule. There is this fringe of the Muslim religion, though, that is succumbing to rationalizing radical jihadism, whereas we've transcended that. In Christianity, there's no longer the crusades to violently try to convert people and save their souls from eternal hell. In Judaism, I'm Jewish, we don't burn animals at the altar anymore. That was pretty stupid. It's crazy that we ever did that. But we evolve, right? And religion is something that evolves.
Yeah, I struggle with that one because sometimes I feel like that, and sometimes I open social media and I feel like we've de-evolved.
Mm-hmm.
Is that, do you ever read Rene Girard or?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so sometimes I feel like we have this human need to sacrifice something or someone, and often it's done in a violent way or aggressive way.
Mm-hmm.
And as the West have removed the actual physical violence to some extent, I think we've added other forms of violent excommunication. And I think that's like a pendulum that swings, and now it's swinging back to the physical violence. And some of these horrible things that are happening around the world at different cultures. And so I'm not convinced that we have evolved. Mm-hmm. We've just transferred that natural instinct because we don't know how to deal with it into other forms of violence and sacrifice. And and we are sacrificing it in different ways. And then now again, I feel like riots and physical violence are coming back.
Yeah.
Especially in like Europe. I'm not bullish on Europe at all. Yeah. As like culture, I feel like there's a lot of cleansing of the past few hundred years that need to happen. And I think the radicalism left and right both ways is going to amplify in the upcoming decades.
Yeah, I mean, I partially agree with that. I mean, you've made some really good points. So parts that I definitely agree with is, for sure, there's violence in the algorithms of social media, that they're constantly trying to keep us engaged. They're hijacking our amygdala to sell us more, to basically capture more of our attention, to sell more ads. And it's big business. I mean, Facebook, Meta, made $45 billion in free cash flow last quarter. That's why someone like Mark Zuckerberg can say, I'm going to spend $600 billion on building AI data centers by 2028. He said that at the recent White House dinner with President Trump. So that is a form of violence. It's a form of mental violence, and it is hijacking us, and it's hijacking our kids. And that's part of the reason why it's so important to read books like Anthony DeMello and try to practice awareness, or How to Surrender to God, to try to make yourself more immune from that type of programming. We're also hijacking ourselves through food, as I covered with Jason Karp. He's a real expert on that. I'm sure you are too. And that is a form of violence. It's violence against our bodies. It's really hijacking our bodies to keep us addicted to food.
And I think the challenge there is the unconscious nature of that sometimes.
Yes.
If, to your point about alcohol, if you're very like conscious and thoughtful and you don't lie to yourself and you have a glass of wine, you don't give it the power, it's actually probably fine. You just whiff, it passes through you. It's a thing, maybe not the best molecule, but you're not attached to it, versus
It does make you feel like shit though the next day.
Yeah. So like,
whereas Four Sigmatic mushrooms, I never feel bad.
totally. I'll give a more innocent example is like processed sugar is pretty poisonous.
It is, yeah.
And it's bad for your gut biome, this and that. But it's also context related. So like, let's assume you go, you're in a beautiful Italian villa, you go to Italy and you visit someone's grandma and they make you a little panna cotta and it's definitely made into processed white sugar. And you have a meal and the meal is surrounded by love and communion and this, and then you have the panna cotta that's made with love. And it's what you are poisoning yourself, technically.
Right.
But then you're not so tied to that feeling.
Yes.
Another way to say it is I've spent my last 20 plus years in the health and wellness community, and I met some of the quote unquote healthiest people on earth. Many of these health experts don't look or feel that healthy, with a couple notable exceptions. I meet them in person, I spend time with them, and they're like, yeah, you have all kinds of issues here.
Right.
And they often actually use it to sell it. Like they have this dramatic weight loss story or whatever, healing story. And it's like, I think you're still sick even though you lost 60 pounds or something.
Right.
It's like, that's not that balanced. And then I go hang out with, one of my friends who's just a surfer who eats like a burrito with tater tots afterwards. And they're just glowing of joy and energy. And the diet is so-so, but there's other factors that tie into,
I agree.
And the intention, back to these poisons and moments, like, it's contextual, and I think it also comes down to how often you do something.
Yeah.
And like at what context.
Yeah.
And people who are very attached to, be it a religion or be it to a belief, they often get very tight.
Right.
And this tightness becomes their prison.
Right.
In a way.
That's right.
Again, words don't explain things well, and I'm probably not doing it justice.
No, you're actually...
There's a freedom, a looseness in love.
That's right. And
levity. It's a levity and outward energy versus the fear has a kind of inward tightness that I've experienced with myself having fear, or people around me having fear. And usually it does end up in a worse place.
Yeah.
Even though on paper, intellectually, it's like, well, I eat this clean and I do this yoga and Pilates and practice and meditate and breath work. But like you're sick all the time. And you say it's because of this gut parasite that you're now cleansing in India for this thing. But like, I think it's probably something emotional or spiritual that it's blocking this energy versus this person who is like not even nearly perfect, but they have love,
Yeah, that's extremely well said. And I think people will exactly know where you're coming from with that. And one of the things that made me think of is, one of the guys that's really rising in the health movement right now is this guy, Brian Johnson.
Yeah.
And he's the pioneer of this don't die movement, right? And he's giving a lot of power to not dying, a lot of power. And I knew him actually before. I don't know him now. He would know me, and I'm sure I'll invite him on the podcast, but he probably would remember me. But I knew him back before he became this kind of health aficionado. And what I remember of him is he had sold his company. He was very wealthy. He did not seem happy. He seemed like he was suffering, and was kind of seeking, like, what is his next cause going to be? And had realized, I think, hey, the answer wasn't money. It never is. That's not like the path to your happiness, as we've already discussed. And my only concern about that, his current incarnation of what he's doing, is he's giving a lot of power to not dying, as is, we've discussed with spirituality. He's given a lot of power to kind of like, you only live once. And he's making big trade-offs as a result. Like he goes to bed, I think at 6 p.m. at night. Maybe it's 8 p.m. He doesn't eat, I think, after 2 p.m. every day. so he kind of jokes around, but he's being serious that he's going to be a difficult person to find a mate now. You know, he got a divorce, and because, you know, he's not going to be the one eating the panna cotta at 8 p.m. in a beautiful place in France. And he's not going to do it because as humans, we can fall in the trap of having consistency bias, where you know, like me declaring like, I don't drink alcohol. If I give so much consistency bias to that I never will drink it, then I'm giving it a lot of power. And that power will control you and consume you, as opposed to, you know, being free about it and just saying, look, I'm going to choose most of the time never to drink alcohol because I know it's poison. But if I was at that French woman's dinner and she offered me a glass of wine, yeah, I would have a glass of wine. And I would definitely eat the panna cotta. And I would enjoy the moment, you know? I mean, those types of moments are honestly what life is all about. Like, when I think about the most important moments in my entire life, they have been the moments where I'm in the most loving state that I could have possibly been in. The birth of our children, you know, that was like a communion. And that was unbelievable. You know, my roadshow for Bizarre Voice and all the people that I knew that was going to impact. And now there's been more than 60 companies started by former Bizarre Voice people. And I set this goal. It was the wrong goal. I'm embarrassed to say this was the goal, but I set this goal when I was 25 that I'd found a company and take it public by the time I turned 40. I turned 40 on the IPO roadshow.
Wow.
But it was a euphoric feeling. And then I realized after going public, it was the wrong goal in the first place.
Well, and
but the impact it had, like the more than 60.
Well, that's the funny thing is, let's, you know, be Brian or someone else. There's often like a hammer looking for a nail. And then they move from material accumulation or professional success to, in this case, like biohacking. And they're very valuable to society, to progress. Like, we can learn a lot from the longevity experiments that Brian are making.
Absolutely.
And same way as he built a company that, like, I use daily, I think, but like regularly has helped people transact with each other.
That's right.
So
he has.
When you are a hammer looking for a nail, you build a lot of houses.
That's right.
And you provide other people a lot of shelter.
That's right.
But it might leave you as the hammer a little empty unless you realize that, like, you don't always need those nails. So in the case of like him or others, like, I respect those people because they provide a lot of value to humanity. Without knowing him personally, I do worry is like, is he okay? Anyway, that's his thing.
No, I agree. I mean, I do want to make the point that I think he is doing a lot of good. And that there are people that need the kind of shock treatment that he's proposing, because it is a shock treatment. I mean, it is a radical change. And one of the things about dieting in general is it is a radical change. One of the things I learned recently, you know, my friend Byron Reese, who I've had on this podcast, one of my best friends, you know, an incredible author, he was the one that taught me that we have the second most neurons in our body, in our gut. And one of the things I learned later is that when we change our diet, let's say that we change to become a vegetarian, like I've been a vegetarian for 15 years. When I made that change, like I had to have a digestive reset, and it's because the biome had to restart in a way. And because you have so many neurons in there, they will scream out and send pain signals to your brain. And so, and I don't care what your diet is, if like all you consume is fast food, if you change from a fast food diet to a whole foods diet, you're going to have that pain for a little while because your gut biome has to reset. And there are people, I'm quite sure that Brian Johnson is helping, that need that intervention. They need a pattern interrupt because they know inside, like every year they're becoming more sluggish, fatter, more unhealthy. In my case, my dad died from a single heart attack when he was 63. It's part of the reason I'm a health nut, is because, I both miss him, but, he did, I will say that, that he did for sure live a life that he loved, and he for sure had a lot of fun in his life. Like when he passed away, the only thing that we could say about it is that he lived his entire life like he was on vacation. And the book I just finished, which I recommended to you before we started this recording, and I'd recommend to everybody, is a book that was introduced to me in August, which is called Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. And in many ways, it's the story of my dad. And I think that there's a reason that I literally finished reading it the minute before you walked in our house to do this recording.
Yeah. Related to that theme, a trippy thing somebody told me as I was starting this journey of unlearning, deprogramming, was that like, hey, what if everybody regrets something on their deathbed? So for a moment, I'm not saying that's true, but let's assume it's true. You will regret something when you're going to die. That's not optional. But what you regret is up to your free will.
That's right.
And that was an interesting thought that I spend years thinking about. Is like, wow, what if that's true? What if I will regret something? Maybe what do I don't want to regret? And I think there's a lot of value in thinking about death, either physical or spiritual death. There's many kinds of death, but it's like, what do you want to stand for? Not everything is possible. And I think people will come to different conclusions. But I personally, I don't want to be trapped in fear. And I have fear all the time, every day. But it's a feeling I hope to lean into and go push past through it, that if possible.
So I want to shift to talk about AI and this age that we're living in. That I'm operating from this place that I think humanity has the next 10 to 15 years to ultimately use our free will to decide to make it to what I'm calling the age of abundance for all, which is really using this exponentially accelerating technology of AI, quantum computing, robotics, brain-computer interfaces to manifest abundance that we can't imagine today. And I think you would agree that today, humanity, for the most part, this isn't true across the world or even across the United States, is living in abundance that we could not imagine 50 years ago, 100 years ago, 200 years ago. That most of humanity has been lifted up out of deep, deep poverty and starvation. It still exists in the world. Most of humanity has overcome slavery. It still exists in the world. One of my friends who's going to be on this podcast is going to be talking about sex trafficking, which is a very difficult subject. We've mostly transcended that, but it still exists in the world, right? So there's still really some dire suffering. But the age of abundance for all, what I'm talking about is being able to create abundance in the most poor parts of the United States, the most rural parts, and the most rural parts of Africa, across the world. And I'm just curious how you personally think about that in this AI moment. Your kids are young. They're never going to know a world that existed before AI. They won't remember that world. You and I cannot, we can still think about what the world was like before the internet, but we're part of the last generation that will ever know that world. Our oldest child is part of Gen Z, and we were talking about Gen Z yesterday and the difference between, because she got offended because I accidentally called her a millennial. She's like, Dad, I'm not a millennial. And I'm like, well, let's look at the differences. And I was like, wow, you're right. this Gen Z is like so different. And it really nailed her. And she said, see, I told you, every generation just gets better and better. And she was right, like it is a much more purposeful, much more meaning-seeking generation, this Gen Z. And your kids, I'm sure, will be a better generation than her. And I'm just curious how you think about this moment, for your kids and for humanity.
I oscillate between like this hopeful and slightly the negative, fearful part a lot in this specific area, and depends on the moments. So there are moments when I'm detached from it. So back to George Carlin, he has the joke about like, why are we here? It's because of plastic. Earth needed plastic, didn't know how to make it. So it had to create us to make plastic.
Yes.
Now that we've created plastic, Earth doesn't need us anymore. So like, pack our packs, we're ready to go.
It's
And
funny.
my love for fungi, the fungi have been here, the first thing to come out of the oceans to dry land. They are in every level of the atmosphere for us. So they probably came from space on a meteorite. Maybe they spurred culture. But us, Homo sapiens, we're pretty fragile at the end of the day. So there are moments where it's like the only way out is through consciousness, loving ourselves and others. And there's this feeling at times. Then there's the practical feeling of like, hey, well, how does this look like?
Right.
And every generation has been better than the previous in some areas. And some areas it's not. Like right now, in the past few years, life expectancy is declining.
Right.
So we are devolving for the first real time physically.
Right.
Reproductive health is in a rapid decline for a bunch of reasons. And it might be actually worse for girls, women. We just haven't measured it as long. So in certain areas, Gen Z or Generation Alpha will make us look so stupid. And then in other areas, they might have their own problems that we're facing, similar to us and baby boomers and the great generation. So the answer is probably a little bit black. It's not like black or white, but it's
gray. Yeah.
Gray is like
anything.
in what areas. And I think this interaction between AI and humans and AI and our kids will be an area that will be so drastically different when my oldest kid, who was like 4.5, just 10 years from now, I can't even imagine what his life is going to be. I literally cannot.
Yeah.
The interactions and the creativity and the use cases and robotics, I can't even, I don't know.
Yeah.
But what I feel fairly confident is that whatever it is, it will come very naturally to them.
Yeah.
Because they've grown up with it.
Yep.
And even though maybe technology evolves much, much, much faster than humanity, I still believe that the children will adopt different unique ways really quickly, whatever the technology is.
Yeah.
And the outcomes of that, I can't even extrapolate. I can't even extrapolate a couple of years now.
Yeah.
But I feel like a lot of good will come out of it and a lot of bad things will come out of it, but they might be in different areas of the lived experience.
The book LSD and the Mind of the Universe by Chris Bosch, chapters 9 through 11 of that I've reread several times now. I've read the whole book, but I reread those chapters several times now. And I was having this conversation with John Mackey, who starts out his book, The Whole Story, he's the founder of Whole Foods.
Of psychedelics.
Yeah. And that was the psychedelic journey that got him over the hump, the fear to start Whole Foods. It's a real tell-all. It's a great book. I mean, it's one of my favorite books. But one of the things that he talks about in LSD and the Mind of the Universe is how we're built for evolutionary speed. Think about the fact that we've only been here on Earth for 250,000 years. And it was almost over during the Ice Age. Like we almost were extinguished by the supervolcano event that made us suffer. We got down to somewhere between 800 and several thousand Homo sapiens, and the human experiment is almost over. We are fragile. And the thing that fascinates me about humanity is how fast we can adapt. Like I use AI many times a day. I use all the major models at this point, and I get this awe and delight of the first time I used AI agents. The first time I used the Comment web browser by Perplexity and went to Amazon and pulled up an AI agent on the side of the browser and had it just do the shopping for me. It's pretty wild to see it take over the browser and do it. But then you very quickly just get used to it as the new norm. I mean, really, really fast, actually.
Yep. And probably even faster for children or teenagers. For us, even if they might not be technologically as savvy in certain areas, they're faster. They don't have the baggage of the past habits the same way.
Yeah. So, I mean, just plain futurist hat here. I'm curious, the Tero futurist hat. Where do you think we're at in 10 years with this movement?
Another quote that I don't know where I got, whoever credited it, but like the drugs are future computers and computers are future drugs. And I do think that is a path where we're headed towards. Like, to Brian Johnson's and others, like, I do believe that we can use computer or AI to solve a lot of problems, including health. Diseases. But there will be a level of the mind that you're going to need. Psychedelics, in this case, drugs refers to, in my head, as to psychedelics that the computers can solve. I guess the closest anecdote I could give is from the Dune book series of like, that there's a point when computers become very strong and there's going to be this Butlerian jihad, a clash between thinking computers and humans. And I hope humans win, but at the same time, like, we have to evolve through the past species. So the guild learns to evolve certain human species to use high doses of psychedelics to fold space so they can do interstellar travel without thinking computers.
That's the spice in Dune.
Yes. I don't know if it's like that extreme, that's specific, but I do believe that there is something around our minds, and particularly minds on psychedelics, that weirdly is the thing that the thinking computers cannot do.
Well, but that's because I think that we have a soul and that we're having a communion with our soul or with heaven or source or consciousness, whatever you want to call it, God, when you do a journey. I mean, you're seeing this reality beyond. And once you've seen that, you can't unsee it.
Yep.
It's not like you can go back and just pretend like that didn't happen. You're like, no, I saw that and it was real.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I do think there is history. I don't think it repeats itself per se. I actually don't believe in that saying that history repeats itself. But there are patterns of particularly human lived experience that manifest in different ways. So maybe it rhymes. Maybe that's a better. So I do think there's going to be a clash. And at some point, I don't know if it's in 5 years, 10 years, probably polarity, like there will be more tension between groups of humans too, amplified by technology. And we need to go through this rebirth. And I think it's very normal to go through these cycles of rebirth. And I think AI will evolve a lot more, like a lot more. And we're going to try to hang on. And then it needs to be like a reset. And often the resets are some sort of wars, the World War II or whatever. And then you hope you come out better on the other side. Ice Age, the polar shifting, magnetic reversal of the poles, or some other catastrophes. Some are created by ourselves, some created by something else. And then we rebuild from that. And that's normal. Societies, cultures have been born and died. And I think AI will follow that pattern. How it unfolds, it's completely beyond my intelligence and comprehension. I'm not even guessing. But for example, with my kids, like, I really don't care about like formal education at all. Like, I have even language. Like, I had to learn 6 languages, and people always ask me, like, do you know Finnish? Like, my kids know Finnish, and I like teach them some words, but they're far from fluent. I also don't care. Like today you can go to Amazon and buy for $20 a little earpiece that will translate 50 languages.
All right. Well, and Apple just came with it.
Yeah. So then that's not even AI. That's
Right.
like a little physical engineering.
We're in the Babel fish.
Yeah, that's like nothing. So like what is like language even matters? So there's certain things I really don't care. I much more care about them learning other things. Like I don't care about their profession. Maybe it's very like white privileged way to think about it too, but like I really think by the time they're even teenagers, most of that is in the past.
Yeah. I mean, people ask me right now, what should their kids study? And I always say whatever they want.
Yeah.
I mean, like I have a friend who about 20 years ago, the book The World is Flat came out by Thomas Friedman.
Yes.
And he stopped his son from programming.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm so glad you weren't my mom, because what you're doing is idiotic.
Yes.
And he was like, what do you mean? He's like, there's not going to be any jobs in this field. Everything's going to go to India. The world is flat now. They'll just do all the programming jobs.
Yep.
And now we're in this age with AI where people are like, nope, that's it. AI is just going to do all the programming. Just stop. And it's so stupid because to think like a systems level thinker, you'll actually be way better with AI.
And if
you actually understand.
It's the arrogance that we talked about the scientists that like, it's like you lose your curiosity. So with my kids, I care more about things like, do they know how to swim?
Right.
And like, when we spend a lot of time in forests in the summer in Finland and we pick mushrooms and berries. And I believe that there are things they're learning that will transfer to any society much greater than memorizing something. Unless they're really into, like one of them is like really into like right now memorizing certain things, but it comes intuitively, like nobody's really pushing him to memorize anything. He's just like, he's into it right now.
Yeah. So where do you think, well, let me ask you it this way. How do you personally think humanity's going to make it to this age? Like, where do you think we'll cross over the Rubicon?
Yeah.
The positive vision of how we'd make it. Like, how do you think that happens?
Yeah. Like I said, I oscillate between the positive and negative. I do, on most days, I feel that we will make it. And why I believe we'll make it is not, I don't know what the map will look like to making it, but I feel like we are very adaptable as a species and we do believe in it. And I do think the map will have some elements of increased consciousness, love to yourself, at least, like loving yourself. And I don't think like materia, for example, is like a solve for it. And I think going through that path too deep will end up in bad places. Now, hard work and entrepreneurship are important. Like I do believe in those. Like, and sometimes people think, no, you can't have one without the other. It's like, I do think they can coexist. So I think the path is around slowing down. I think there are a lot of physical gateways that can help us reach. So it's like the physical elements of our form are like the white belt or the blue belt of karate. The black belt is like the soul, and like the brown belt is the like the mind, or whatever anecdote you want to say. But you cannot get the black belt before you have the blue belt. And I think the big unlock for a lot of people is their physical form. And that is the food they eat, how they breathe. A lot of people don't know how to breathe, detachment from nature. And these are not the be-all, end-all. But by focusing on the physical form will unlock the next levels of us as humanity. And I'm really worried about the increases of illnesses and obesity and gut biome and many, many things. Like there are all these kind of symptoms that I could list for hours. You know, I know you and Jason talked about some of the issues, but I think the way out is the basics. In the time of crisis, don't like overcomplicate it. Don't overthink it. Focus on the basics, like breath. You know, slowing down. I think most of us need a dopamine reset. We are over addicted to to dopamine. I think we don't get the nutrients. We get excess calories, not enough nutrients.
Right.
And we're constantly deprived of sleep, nutrients, connection with nature, love. And that is not the way through this revolution. It's the opposite.
Yeah.
So I think it's back to the basics.
Yeah. It reminds me of the Tao Te Ching.
Yeah.
It's walking the way.
Yeah. And it's some of the elements are so unpredictable and so uncontrollable. Even if you're the leading AI expert in the world, you have no clue, I think, what's going to happen. And we see this with stock market. The incentives are there, the best stock market investors, to always know the right answers, and they don't. Right? So I think control what you can control, which is literally like chop wood and carry water and that, and then be curious about the rest. But like stay focused on the day-to-day. That's kind of how I look at it. But there will be a lot of opportunities for great things for humanity. I just don't know what they are, but it's also very exciting.
It is very exciting. And this is probably a layup for you based on everything we just talked about. That what are you personally doing to make sure we make it to that age?
The last couple of years, I've become much more inward. Before I had kids, I would go to all these events and conferences and like give speeches and talks, and it was very like outward to this personal brand. And ever since having kids, I spend time with a lot less people, and it's more inward. So I just mostly, maybe it's selfish, but I focus on a very small group of humans and trying to help myself and those people around me. I know there's probably an opportunity to do good podcast. I have a YouTube show I'm relaunching. I did it for a year. It grew to 140,000 subscribers, and now I'm kind of redoing it.
What's that called?
I'm actually changing the name. It's called The Spore. But yeah, The Spore. But yeah, I think I once read, how do you say this in English? Saint Francis de Assisi, right?
That's right.
Yeah. The more he learned about God, the quieter he became. Stopped talking about God.
Yeah.
And I think
Anthony Mello talks about that too.
Yeah.
In awareness.
But I'm pretty focused on like being present with my kids. And I don't know if I have that broad of an impact right now. But I mean, I build companies and I do things, and there's impact beyond my horizon that I can't comprehend. But compared to what I did 5 years ago, I'm living a pretty inwardly focused life.
Yeah. Well, I can at least give you credit for changing my life with diet and all the people I know that are fellow Four Sigmatic friends. And I think I've gotten you a lot of business because anytime someone comes over here,
I'm sure.
offer, like, do you want me to make you a smoothie? And they usually say yes, and they're like, wow, this is delicious. They start buying your products.
Yeah, I guess Four Sigmatic is now launching at Costco. So a lot of Americans go to Costco, so giving them
we're Costco fans.
Cup of consciousness.
So Costco is one of the best run American companies, pays their employees very well, very strong culture. And actually, one of the things I know from Costco is I'm pretty sure their margins are tied at between 5 and 13% on all products. They never allow more than that in terms of margin. So you really know you're buying it.
I can tell from first-hand experience, selling to them versus selling to others. They basically the margin they take is their logistics, warehousing, and people cost. They don't make really money selling Four Sigmatic.
That's right.
The money they make is in the membership, and the rest is given as value to the member.
I think 75% of their profits comes from the membership.
Yeah.
It's 75%.
Yeah.
Well, hey, I love this. I really appreciate it, my friend. I'm really thankful to have you as such a good friend.
Thanks for having me on. And I'm excited to where this goes and the project and the business that will be birthed from this. I'm excited to
You bet. Yeah.
follow the journey.
Well, it's a pleasure. Well, thanks everybody for tuning in to another episode of Love Conquers Fear. Stay tuned. A lot of incredible people coming up. Some brilliant scientists, investors. I'm going to be recording soon with Mike Maples Jr. who wrote one of my favorite books called Pattern Breakers. He's been a longtime investor in me and is one of the all-time legendary seed investors. And lots of other amazing people. So look forward to continuing to put these out there, and hopefully it's making a lot of impact in your life, and hopefully you're sharing it. I would really appreciate you getting the word out so that we can get this knowledge to more people. Thanks again.